Hello, welcome to Creativity Boost Podcast. Have you ever wondered what makes some people so good that they cannot be ignored? Have you ever wondered what makes some leaders so successful that whatever they touch becomes successful, whatever they touch turns to gold? Have you ever wondered why some leaders always leave a positive influence on people, and whenever they leave the stage or whenever they leave office or whenever they leave the presence of people, people cannot but make a good remark about them? Well, today we're going to be talking about how to be a remarkable leader, and there's no other person to dissect this wonderful subject than Dr. Randy Ross. Yes, Dr. Randy Ross is an enigma when it comes to leadership. He's someone who has a track record for building teams, scaling leaders in teams, and helping companies develop a culture of leadership, thereby driving business growth. Right? So I'm going to bring him up and he's going to tell us more about himself as we get right into it. Hi, Randy. You want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hey, Dafe. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be on your podcast and share this time with all of your listeners. It's a real privilege. And I love this topic because being remarkable means that you provide a service or a product and you do it in such a way that you blow people away. That you go the second mile, you deliver world-class service. You go above and beyond to such a degree that you impact people's lives in such a positive way that when they leave your presence, they have this irrepressible desire to talk about you and the good impact that you've made in their lives while they were in your presence. And so I love this topic. I love challenging people to choose to be remarkable. I love talking about what is required to help people become remarkable. And so thank you for the opportunity to be on your show.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And just with the way you've broken the ice, I can tell that this is going to be a very rewarding conversation. So if you're listening to this on the other side, I want you to sit back, relax, take your pen, take your pieces of papers, take your notepad, because we are about to get this started. Now, Dr. Randy, do you want to tell us a bit about leadership? Because there's a lot of stuff that has been said about leadership everywhere. You know, the internet is littered with different descriptions and definitions of leadership. So in order for us to get everyone on the same page in today's conversation, I feel the need to allow you to help us set a baseline for what leadership is. So you want to go for it?
Sure. Well, everything it has been said rises and falls on leadership, and I would completely agree. But leadership is the capacity to create a relationally rich environment where people can flourish. If you think about it, everything that we do relies upon people. We may have a service or a product, but it has to be delivered through people. And people interact with other people on the front line. And that, in essence, creates our brand because they are delivering on a promise that we're making. And so when it comes to taking care of people, encouraging people, challenging people, elevating people, that's what our role as leaders happens to be. And it's not a title. It's a position of influence. It's a way that we behave and we move and we interact in our world that inspires people to bring the very best of who they are to the table every single day. So that's what a leader's role is. Now, a leader is someone who understands the power of culture and creates a culture that is compelling, that people are attracted to. One of the biggest challenges right now that I hear leaders everywhere talk about is how do we find good talent? You know, how do we attract and how do we retain top talent? And the answer to that is all in culture. And culture is an expression of leadership. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So the primary focus of every good leader has to be how do you craft and how do you maintain a positive work environment? That's the essence of good leadership.
That is so good. And I like what you said, that every leader, or rather you said culture is an expression of a leader's work, right? And I think that is really correct, because culture is a reflection of the leader's ethos, the leader's values,
That's right.
the leader's creed, the leader's beliefs, his belief systems, right? And so when you see a broken system, it's always right to think there may be a problem in leadership, right? Many people have yet to come to understand the impact leadership can have on people, that they have allowed the subject of leadership to become a cliche.
Right.
But I wanted us to revisit this concept of leadership because you even mentioned something about attracting talent. For me, I feel like leadership is, or a leader is someone who knows how to bring the best out of someone. There's the place for attracting the best hands from external domain, right? But every good leader knows how to take advantage of what they have, the raw, unprocessed gifts and talent in the people that are at their disposal, and turn that into a rare gem, turn that into gold. And that's where manifesting or expressing the creativity in followers becomes critical. And that's why I brought you on the show, because I believe that creativity is critical to successful leadership, and I'm going to explain why I said that. For example, if we have someone who wants to lead a company, has a pioneering vision to pioneer something, let's assume someone like Steve Jobs, he came up with this great vision, this grand vision to pioneer a company that is right now a global leader, even in his absence. But he needed people to deploy their creativity in their own sub-departments and sub-domains, so that collectively that group of people or that company will succeed in the overall goal or vision. But what we have today is leaders looking for already baked talent, already made talent, and even when they have raw talent just lurking around them, they are quick to dismiss, those unprocessed talent that may just need a little more attention and processing. Now, I said all of that to bring us to the next point of our conversation. What is the biggest challenge in leadership that causes leaders to be unable to turn a team of weak people to a team of strong men and women?
Oh.
What do you think leaders need to be looking at to be able to help influence people in the right direction and bring the best out of them? Because like we have already established, everything rises and falls on leadership.
Well, great observations. And, it's interesting because people don't quit jobs. They quit cultures, and they quit leaders. That's what they quit on. And so I think that you can, as a leader, as an organizational leader, you can rent people's hands, and you can rent their heads. You can give them a paycheck to bring their head and their hands to work, to get productivity out of them. But when it comes to their heart, Dafe, when it comes to their heart, that's something that's voluntarily given. And so I think this is the essence. The essence is that leadership has to be able to connect personal passion and purpose to corporate objectives. We have to know our people. To your point, we have to know what are their strengths, what's their potential, what are their gifts, what's their creativity, what is their passion points, and how do we stir those as leaders? A lot of times we have metrics and objectives that we're trying to strive for, and there's nothing wrong with that because we have to measure our productivity. But the problem is we have to start with the people. We have to start with the values that they possess. We have to start with the passion that they have. And that way, if we are able to connect that personal passion to the corporate objectives, we're going to hit those metrics much, much faster. A lot of times, leaders, people who claim to be leaders, who hold titles, they're all about driving people to productivity. But that's not the essence. I guess you could put it this way. Leaders know how to build a good business. Good leaders know how to utilize the people effectively to grow a big business or build a business. Great leaders utilize the people in such a way that the people are able to leverage their gifts and their passion to build the business. But remarkable businesses use the business to grow the people who then grow the business. And it's a completely different focus. We're not just trying to grow the business. We're trying to grow the people who then grow the business. And if that's our focus, if we want to see our people grow, if we want to see them express their creativity, if we want to see them maximize their potential, if we want to see them get to fulfillment in meaningful work, which, by the way, is absolutely critical, because there's nothing that cripples the human spirit faster than meaningless work. And leaders need to remember that. We were taught that by Viktor Frankl. So helping people find meaning, fulfillment, and passion in what they do is the most critical job a leader has.
Wow, that is amazing. And I love the way you partitioned the different levels of leadership. You talked about good leaders, you talked about leaders, you talked about good leaders, you talked about great leaders, then you talked about remarkable leaders. Remarkable leaders, like you have said, know how to use the business, grow the business to grow the people. And that brings us all back to this whole idea of, leaders being able to tap into the latent resource potential of the people that look up to them, able to unlock the creative capacities of people that are around them or that are related or connected to them. So for me, when I see lots of nations, let's look at the macro scale right now. We see on a national level leadership deficiencies in people who ought to be the examples of leadership. We see on a macro level, we see bankruptcy in systems, in economic systems, in political systems because of a brokenness in the leadership ethos of people who we're supposed to look up to as leaders. And we hear these people telling us that, there's not enough resources. We hear these people, misappropriating funds. We hear them engaging in corrupt practices. We hear them not tapping into the potential of the country, whether it's a mineral resource or a natural resource or a human resource potential of that country. And for me, when I see those problems, here's what I think. I think it's due to a lack of creativity, because most times what's always talked about when the subject of leadership is brought up is competence and character. As far as I'm concerned, competence and character are very fundamental to a successful leadership, but competence and character without creativity could lead to a failed leadership pursuit. So that brings me to my next question. What do you think is critical to becoming a remarkable leader according to your own worldview?
So let's have some fun here, okay? Let's unpack this, because I'm going to share some things that maybe many of your listeners have never heard before. But you've used a couple of my favorite words. You've used the word ethos. Well, ethos, the basic word ethics, from which character comes, goes all the way back to Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, and virtuous cycles of doing good, right? And you've used the word values. And you're absolutely right. We don't lack for resources. We lack for values. And I say this, that metrics do not create value. Value creates the metrics. And so let me just break that down. There's a field of study called axiology. And I don't know if you're familiar, I don't know if your viewers are familiar, but axiology is a strain of philosophy that speaks volumes into this whole topic of leadership. Axiology is a strain of philosophy that talks about values, value creation, and value constructs. It's for me the best explanation of human motivational behavior, because what it posits is this: that whatever you value or you believe will create the most value for you and those around you, that's what you're going to pursue. It makes logical sense. And again, it goes back to Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. It comes forward in modern teaching through guys like Robert Hartman, the father of modern axiology. But there's certain principles and practices that are exemplified in the essence of axiology that apply to leadership. And so, there are four critical, foundational, fundamental, what we call maxims or universal truths of axiology. And the first one is this: it's the maxim of creativity. And that's what you're talking about. You can have you can have competence, you can have character, but you have to have creativity. But beyond creativity, you also have to have connectivity. But the first maxim is creativity. And so here's the question that you have to ask. Do you create more value than you take? It's a very, very simple question, but it's profound in its implications, because you're talking about organizational leaders, world leaders, political leaders who are bankrupt. They're bankrupt when it comes to their character. They're bankrupt when it comes to their competence. They're saying there are not enough resources to go around. Well, in the world, there are only two kinds of people. There are value creators and there are value extractors. And a value extractor is someone who lives with the scarcity mentality that you mentioned, where you basically say, look, there's only so much to go around. And if I want to survive, I have to get to the table to get as much off the table for myself as I possibly can.
True.
The problem is, if you have a world of value extractors, then it won't be too terribly long till everybody rushes to the table to get what's theirs. And before long, there won't be anything left on the table. And when there's nothing left on the table, the game is over. You may as well go home, right? But the other type of person is a value creator. And a value creator lives with an abundance mentality that says this: no, if we all bring more to the table than we take away, at the end of the day, there will be a surplus on the table that then can be shared by everyone who helped to create that value. And that's the difference between a value creator and a value extractor. So whether you're a parent or a spouse or a community leader or a coach or a political figure, the question is today, did you bring more to the people around you? Did you bring more value to them than you extracted from them? A good leader brings value to the table. A bad leader extracts value. And that's the essence of creativity. Do we inspire people to bring more of themselves to the table? Or are we creating an atmosphere of fear and domination and micromanagement, or scarcity of resources where people are afraid that they're not going to get everything that they need to survive? And if we create an atmosphere where people are prone to be value creators, then there's nothing that we can't do together.
Wow, that is phenomenal. So can you go further to tell us what value actually is? Because just the way I said, the internet is littered with different definitions and schools of thought about leadership. That's the same way the digital landscape is proliferated with different people's definitions of value. So I want you to help us nip it to the bud and tell us what value is, so that when we're creating value, we know exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, there are three kinds of values. There are first of all, there are aesthetic. The first is ethical values. They're ethical values. What's good, what's right, what's morally just. Okay. And I think all of us innately know that there are certain rules of life, certain spiritual foundation principles, certain universal truths that without those, humanity would be lost. And so there's the ethical side of values. There's the aesthetic side of values, which is what's beautiful, what's good in the world. And then there's the functional values as well. And all of those apply to each one of us. There's an ethical component. There's which is a moral component. There's the aesthetic component. What value and what beauty are we bringing to the world? And then thirdly, there's the functional component. And the best part of axiology, I believe, is that axiology is the study of good. What's good in the world? And it's how do we create movements of good in organizational life? And so that's what the whole axiological principles are based upon. So value then is what brings the most good to me and everyone around me, not just to me individually, but to everyone around me collectively, which gets back to the creativity and the connectivity, because we don't live in isolation. We live in this community, whether that be a family unit, a family of origin, whether that be a local community, whether that be the global community. We all live as a part of community. So it can't be just what's good for me. It has to be what's good for all of us collectively.
Wow, and that is true by all means. Can you talk a bit more about connectivity, because what you said is so graphic, because I can literally see it play out. I've seen it play out in many circles of leadership. I've seen it play out in many ecosystems of leadership where we have leaders that do not connect with people
Right.
around them. Whether in the family level, we have leaders that do not connect with the children, the spouses. We have leaders that are disconnected. Whether it's in the societal level, we have disconnected leaders. Whether it's on a national scale, we have disconnected leaders. Whether it's on an organizational plane, we have disconnected leaders who just come, they show up, they look at the numbers, they look at the metrics, like you have said before, and they just make decisions based on the metrics while being totally disconnected from the realities on ground. So, can you help us unpack what connectivity in leadership is all about and how that plays into these dynamics that we're talking about?
Absolutely. The first maxim that we talked about was the maxim of creativity. The second maxim is the maxim of positivity. And this is where connectivity comes in, because the maxim of positivity asks the question, do you leave a positive wake? Do you leave a positive wake in the world? Which is all about connectivity. Are you connecting effectively with people around you to create a movement of good? Every person's life leaves a ripple impact. Just like a boat going through the water leaves a ripple impact on the shore, every single person's life leaves a ripple impact. And now we're beginning to see that even more so in corporate life. We know how we impact others around us because every human interaction is emotionally framed, and we leave an impression on people. We're either going to be a wellspring of life, bringing joy to that other individual, or we're going to be a drain. Same thing happens corporately. There's this whole movement afoot, and I know you're very well versed in this, a corporate social responsibility. Mm-hmm. Some people call it conscious capitalism. Some people call it giving back. But here's the bottom line. Dafe, people like to do good business with businesses that do good. And so the question then becomes, how are we creating a movement of good? How are we connecting with the community to do good? How are we changing the world in a positive way? So connectivity and positivity goes hand in hand. And we have to ask, how are we as organizations leaving a positive wake in the world? If we're not leaving a positive wake in the world, we've not fulfilled our purpose. Because the purpose of business is not to make money. Most people would tell you that it is. If you go to any MBA program, in this country or anywhere, they'll tell you the purpose of business is to make money. But I fundamentally disagree. I think the purpose of business is to improve the human condition. The purpose of business is to leave a positive wake in the world. But if you do that, people will support your business.
Yeah.
If all you're about is making money and people discover that all you're about is making money, they will abandon your cause. And we see that with this next generation, generation X, Y, millennials, the next geners, the alphabet geners. They are some of the most purpose-driven individuals that I know, because they're not about just making more money for shareholders. They want to know, will my company be engaged in doing good in the world? Are we making a difference? And that's what is going to be required to engage the next generation, because they're not like the boomers. They're not out to get as much as they possibly can for themselves. They want to make a difference in the world, and organizations are beginning to realize that. So the maximum of positivity is, how are we connecting to give back in the world? And I think that's the second of the four, and I think it's critically important.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, can we talk about how to help other people discover their leadership and find their purpose as a leader? Because we already spoke about one of the cardinal keys of remarkable leaders being being able to grow a business to grow people. Now, speaking of that, how do you grow people into leaders as a leader yourself?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you and I have not spent much time together before this podcast,
Yeah.
but you're setting up every single one of my, you know, my main points, because that
Wow.
takes us right into the third point of axiology by no coincidence, and that's the sustainability. In order to sustain value creation, you have to leverage your passion and your strengths to solve problems. So if we want to raise up strong leaders, here's what we have to do. We have to say, okay, well, fundamentally, first, you have to establish what are your values? What's most valuable to you? Ethically, aesthetically, functionally. What's valuable to you? What's important to you? What's your purpose? So you have to combine on the foundation of the values. You want to help individuals, if they're going to become strong leaders, to combine their passion, what do they love to do, with their strengths. There's a whole lot of talk in the marketplace about pursue your passion, right? Do what you love to do. Well, sometimes that gets a very hollow ring because I can't always do what I love to do. So I love to play golf, but no one has ever paid me to play golf. That tells you a whole lot about my golf game, right? It's not very good, but yet we have to do what we enjoy doing to find fulfillment and meaning in the marketplace. So we have to take into consideration what are we passionate about. But then we have to leverage our strengths. And there's a lot of emphasis about strengths. And I love this idea of leaning into your strengths, but that's not enough either. That's not enough to sustain. You have to combine your passion and your strengths. And here's where the rubber meets the road to solve a problem. If you're not solving a problem, people won't pay you to do it. If they won't pay you to do it, it's a hobby. It's not a profession. And so your passion is important. Your strengths are important. But the question is, what problems will you solve? And here's where it gets fun. To create value, the fastest way to create value is to find the biggest problem you can find and solve it. Because the greater the problem that you find and solve, the more value you create in the process. And the more value you create, the more invaluable you become. And that's how you sustain value creation. So you're asking, how do we raise up leaders? Well, first of all, we have to help them identify what are your values? What are you passionate about? What moves your heart? What moves your heart? What inspires you? What strengths do you bring to the table? And now combine all that, your values, your passion, your strengths to solve. What problem do you want to solve? And even in organizational life, I coach people all the time. There's this concept in organizational life about career pathing, where the organization tells you, this is the career path that you're on. This is what you need to do to get to the next level. If you want to become this kind of a leader, you go there. I challenge people to career craft. Don't follow the career path, career craft. In other words, you craft your future. And the way you do that is you share with the organization, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I do really well. And these are the problems that I can solve. And if the organization has problems that you can solve, I guarantee you they'll pay you to do it.
That is awesome. Now, I want us to, for the purpose of clarity, go a bit further on the concept of if you don't solve a problem, no one will pay you, to do what you're passionate about. So, what kind of problem would you say someone like Tiger Woods was solving, being one of the top 1% golfers in his time? What kind of problem would you say someone like Michael Jordan was solving, right? Because a lot of people find it difficult to quantify value in those fields. And they feel like, well, these guys are just doing what they love and what they're passionate about, and they're just getting paid to do their hobby. So can you help us, bring some clarity to that idea?
Well, it's very rare to find someone like Tiger Woods, who has the athleticism and the passion to be at the very top of his game, but it's an individual sport. So what value was he bringing? He was bringing value to himself, and he was bringing value to his family. He was bringing value to a whole host of viewers who enjoy watching him see the refinement of his game. But was there a problem there? Probably not. But Michael Jordan, when he started playing for the Bulls, Chicago they really wanted a championship brought home. The problem was they hadn't had one in a while. Right? So the problem was, hey, we'd like to bring a championship home. And he had to work together with the team to make that happen.
Yeah.
He had to play with some guys that were probably very challenging to play with. So he had to coalesce a team. He had good talent around him, but the problem that he was facing that Tiger Woods didn't have to face, Tiger Woods' problem was all in his head. It was internal. Michael Jordan's problem was he had to work together with these other individuals to coalesce a group of superstars who had not played well together as a team. So the problem he solved was, how did he, by his leadership, by his example, and by his own athleticism, which garnered the respect that he needed to influence others, how did he bring a team together to produce a championship team? That was a challenge before him. And all of us want to play on a championship team.
Yeah.
We may not be able to bring home a championship like that, but here's a great twist on that. Again, I work with leaders and organizations, and I get tired of hearing, we want to be the best in the world. I really get tired of hearing that. Yes, I get it. People want to serve on a championship team. They want to be a part of a successful endeavor. I get that. But here's the question I'd rather them ask. How can we be the best for the world? Not the best in the world, but the best for the world. How can we use our business to impact the world in a positive way? There's an organization here in town that many people may be familiar with. They're a national player in the quick service space, and the group is Chick-fil-A. Many people don't know Chick-fil-A's internal mission statement, their call to arms. Are you ready for this? To be the world's most caring company. What does that have to do with chicken sandwiches? Nothing. But when you set out to change the world by caring for people deeply, it changes everything that you do. And so the problem in the world is that we need creativity. We need positivity. We need connectivity. We need sustainability. We need to enhance responsibility to make that happen. And that's what the principles of axiology are all about. And they're profound when it comes to cultivating organizations that are having an impactful influence in the world. What I'm called to do is help organizations develop leaders worth following and crafting cultures that will attract and retain top talent. That's my purpose. And so that's a fun space to play in, because there are a lot of organizations that need to do a lot of heavy lifting and thinking about how can we develop leaders worth following.
Wow. That is so phenomenal. And I think you have really, really brought a very good perspective on all of these different angles. I don't know, would you like to tell us on a final note the top 3 things that anyone can do to become a remarkable leader? So let's assume that we have a listener right now who says, man, maybe this leadership thing, I'm not so good at it. Maybe I suck at leadership. But now, how do I become a remarkable leader? If there are 3 things you can say, that may not be all there is to it, but you can just give us the first 3 things that one can, start doing or start taking into cognizance to get ahead. Now would be the time to say it.
Okay. Well, off the top of my head, here's what I would say. The first one is define your purpose. Every life has a purpose. Every organization has a purpose. Every organization has a mission statement. So my question to individuals is, what's your purpose? What's your personal life purpose statement? What's your leadership legacy going to be? So you've got to, first thing is establish your purpose. Secondly, define your values, because they will serve as the foundation for everything that you do. And then pursue creativity.
Wow. Now, quick disclaimer, I never suggested to Randy about the idea of pursuing creativity. So I feel fascinated that he has added that to the point, and I feel compelled to ask him to tell us a bit more about why he feels we should actually pursue creativity. Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, creativity is the expression of who you're designed to be. There are things that I can do that only I can do. There are things that you can do that only you can do. There are things, we're each gifted in different ways. We have different passions. We have different strengths. And when we understand that, we recognize that, we can bring all of those together to accomplish more together than we ever could individually. But creativity is leaning into the very best that you have to offer and bringing that to the table on a daily basis.
Wow, that is amazing. And I want to say thank you, Dr. Randy, for all of these wonderful thoughts that you've just shared. For you listening on the other side, if you would like to get in contact with Dr. Randy, or you like to go deeper in all of this concept, I'd recommend you get his books. I'm going to drop links for those in the show notes. You can also search for them on Amazon. Dr. Randy, you want to tell us about your books, like in case someone is interested in getting a copy or some copies?
Sure. You can get our books wherever fine books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore. The book that we've referred to today is Remarkable. And it's that's the title of the book, Remarkable. It's about how do you craft engaging cultures, superior service, and garnering outrageous results. But we also have other books on leadership, like Relationomics is another book. During COVID, I wrote a book called Fireproof Happiness. And then a book I released just recently is Make Life Good, which was a lot of fun. It's about giving back and connecting with the community and expressing your creativity by doing good in the world. So any of those books, if they could help your listeners, I would be honored if they picked them up and found them to be a useful resource.
Absolutely. So you heard it from the man himself. Go for those books. I'm going to drop the links on the show notes. You can also explore and check on Amazon. Dr. Randy Ross is the name. Thank you so much for listening. I believe you've had a very, very rewarding experience listening to today's conversation. And I'm going to implore you to share this episode with someone out there who needs to hear how to be a remarkable leader. Like you already know, the world is bankrupt of leaders who are competent, confident, creative, and good at connecting with people. And by today's conversation, I believe the spark will be ignited in anyone who wants to be more but does not know how, why, where, when, or if to be more, by helping them become remarkable in leadership, helping them lead with their gifts, and helping them dominate their creative space using their God-given gifts and talents. And so I'm going to leave it here for now. Thank you once again for tuning in and listening. I'll see you on my next episode. Until then, have a good one and bye-bye.